All right, we can get started. Thank you all for coming today. Today we have Dr. Alex Varakin, and he's going to talk about utilizing publisher and free resources in your online classroom. So please take it over.
All right. Well, thank you guys for inviting me here today. It's I've been teaching online at EKU for, I don't know, since 2011 now. So it's been a while. So I've got a little bit of experience using various resources in online courses. And I feel like I should apologize, especially for people who are listening to me through a microphone. I'm getting over a cold, so if you hear excessive throat clearing, I apologize for that. There's a little bit of an overview of what I'm going to talk about. First, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about the classes I'm teaching to help you understand my decision process for choosing outside resources. Then I'll go over some of the costs and benefits of paid versus free resources, at least as I see them in my experience. Then I'll show you some current examples of things that I'm doing in online classes that are being offered right now or that will be offered very soon. Then I'll talk about some of the things I've done in the past that maybe haven't worked so well that I'm not doing anymore. And then I'll wrap up with what I think is something that's very important for online instruction. Okay. So first, just a little bit about the courses I teach. I teach 2 classes regularly online at EKU, introductory psychology and an upper level psychology course called Sensation and Perception. And these 2 courses are different in a lot of ways. Both are primarily content courses where the goal is for students to learn certain content, but in terms of the breadth and depth, they're quite different. Intro Psychology is a survey course. It covers all major areas of psychology, from history, research methods, neuroscience, all the way up to talk therapies. It's a gen ed course. Because it's a gen ed course, it's got very high enrollment. We get at least 100 students in the online sections every semester, well, about 100. And if you count the sections that aren't online, it's approaching 1,000 students. In contrast, Sensation and Perception, this is an upper level course. It focuses on sensory and perceptual processing, so seeing, hearing, touch, taste, smell. So how our sensory systems work. So it's much more focused in terms of content. And it's not a required course for anybody, but it does fulfill a major area requirement for psychology majors. So psychology majors have to take 1 course on the biological basis of behavior. Psych 315 covers that. So consequently, Psych 315 has much lower enrollment than Psych 200. For the online sections, we only offer it in the spring semester every year, and we get between 30 and 60 students, or at least we have for the past couple of years. So because of the differences in the material, there's differences in the kinds of things that are possible to do. So for introductory psychology, for some of the topics, it's very hard to create, a website that creates, has an interactive demonstration. With Sensation and Perception, on the other hand, that's actually pretty easy to do. A lot of research in vision, for example, is done on a computer model. So it's very easy to translate that kind of stuff into an online environment. And in terms of the availability of different kinds of materials, there's differences as well. So for introductory psychology, there are lots and lots and lots of options for supplementary materials. Very easy to find, but not all of it is good. And I will show you some examples of some stuff that is not good. With Sensation and Perception, on the other hand, there's relatively few options, but what's available, when I find stuff, it tends to be higher quality. And again, I'll show you some examples of that. And feel free to stop me at any time if you have questions. So here I'll show you an example of a free resource from psychology, for Psychology 200. So go over here to my web browser. This is from allpsych.com, and they have sort of what their saying is a free resource, free textbook for introductory psychology. And you scroll down here and you can see, they're covering lots of different topics, everything you would expect in an introductory psychology textbook. So if I go over here, I'll choose sensation and perception because that's my area. Click on that, have a look, and what we see, it's got a little bit of text, a picture, stock photo, go through a little bit more text, another stock photo, explains some important concepts for understanding perceptual processes and sensory processes, and then talks a little bit about perception. But what's kind of missing here for all of this stuff is it's all text. First, there's not much text, and the diagrams that are there, except for this one here, really don't have anything to do with the topic, right? So understanding things like the eyeball and how the eyeball works, it's kind of helpful to have a diagram of the eyeball. A similar thing for the brain. I'm not going to show you every single chapter in here, but the problem here is that there's not a lot of coordination between the text and the pictures. It's almost like they just found whatever picture they could that looked nice from some stock photo site, threw it up there. And so I would not rely on something like this, even as a supplement, because our students buy a textbook that has all this information and more, complete with good figures. Now, we can go here now to free resources for Site 315, and that is this website here. And this is an optical illusions, a visual phenomenon optical illusions, maintained by a professor at the University of Freiburg in Germany, Michael Bach. And I guess if we ever decide to offer classes in German, this website here would make that really easy to do. But you go on here and scroll down a little bit. One nice thing, go find the one I'm trying to go to, the biological motion. There it is. So we can click on here. You don't have to know what biological motion is, but it's got this nice little video here that shows you what biological motion is. Nice little description of what it is, and what's more, it links out to outdated URL, but to another website, another free resource that has more good demos. Right, here's another illusion of motion. Take the course if you're interested in learning about this. But so this is a free resource that's maintained by an academic. He tries to stay up to date on it. It's got compelling demonstrations, and it links to other free resources. So the one I just showed you there links to other free resources. But if I go down here a little more, you can see some of these demonstrations here are actually interactive. So if you stare at this little point right here, you should start to see a little green thing going around in a circle being chased by pink things. That's an illusion. But what's nice here about this particular demonstration is that students can mess around with it. Right? So this is a fully interactive, they have full control over what's going on in this website. And this guy, Michael Bach, he goes kind of overboard with things. He even goes into details about how he made these demonstrations for people who want, I never require students to go all the way down that rabbit hole, but if they wanted to, they could. Stop that there. And this again is just completely free. It's just this guy does it as a service, and it's out there. So what I have done with my two classes, Psychology 200 and Psych 315, is for Psychology 200, I go with the publisher-provided supplementary materials that students have to pay a little bit extra for. And for Psych 315, I have relied completely on free resources. And one of the big reasons is for intro psych, there's a lot of stuff available, but a lot of it is low quality. So I was spending a lot of time sifting through low quality stuff that just wasn't that useful. But because Intro Psych is a high enrollment course, publishers have invested a lot of money in creating good supplementary materials for the course. So all of the big publishers have some product for introductory psychology that is pretty good. With sensation and perception, on the other hand, it's pretty easy to find high quality free resources. And because the enrollment is pretty low, I give you the enrollment numbers for here at EKU, 30 to 60 students a year. And we're higher than some other universities. Some universities don't offer the course at all. So from the publisher's perspective, they don't have a lot of money, a lot of interest in investing in supplemental materials for this particular course. And so a lot of them don't. A lot don't even offer a textbook. But the researchers doing the work have sort of stepped in, I guess, where the publishers haven't and have put a lot of stuff up on their university or personal websites. So now I'll just show you this next slide. This is just sort of an overview of at least in my experience, some of the costs and benefits of paid versus free resources. Yep.
We have a question from Kelly Smith. What do you think about the OpenStax free intro psychology textbook?
The OpenStax?
Yeah.
Free, I'm not familiar with that particular textbook. The one I've looked at more is the Nova. Mm-hmm. I might have looked at OpenStax at some point a while ago, but in general, what I found with the free textbooks is some of them are good with text, but then it's the supplements, it's the interactive activities where a lot of them sort of fall a little bit short.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
This might be a long question, or might be one that you're going to be talking about a bit, but you talk about good resources. And my question for you is, how do you define good?
Well, I'll sort of be hitting on this as I go, because there's not a simple answer to that. But one, it addresses appropriate content in an appropriate way, and it works pretty seamlessly.
Okay.
So those are, and it really depends on kind of the goal.
Sure.
I guess. Sometimes you're just trying to demonstrate something. Sometimes you're trying to practice quizzes or something like that. So what counts as a good demonstration is different than what counts as a good practice quiz. But I'll show a bit of both.
Thank you.
But this is just sort of like an overall sort of what I think benefits and costs of paid and free resources. So for the benefits of the paid resources, a lot of times they're very feature rich, and I'll show you some examples here of some of the features that are available in the resource that I use, which is from McGraw-Hill. The paid resources often also integrate pretty well with the Blackboard gradebook, which is important if you want to grade these assignments. And a lot of the activities are based on learning science and metacognition research. And this is, I know sometimes it seems like a buzzword that gets thrown around, but I'm a cognitive scientist. I've been doing research in this area for a long time now, and I like seeing publishers putting out products that take the science seriously. And another big one, this one shouldn't be tech support. That benefit shouldn't be understated, because technology fails sometimes, and it's nice having an email or a tech support number to refer students to. But what I find oftentimes with the McGraw-Hill stuff, students will email me a question about something not working right. By the time I reply to them, the tech support team in McGraw-Hill's already helped them get the issue sorted out, and that is wonderful. Of course, the costs. One of the costs of the paid resources is that there's literally a cost. Students have to pay extra money. How much extra money varies quite a bit. I've seen some supplementary materials in the range of $15 to $20. The one I'm using now, it's bundled with a textbook, so they get a textbook and an access code for something like $60. And it can be quite a bit more than that, depending on the deal that we're able to reach with the publishers, but there is a cost associated with it. And another is because these are not open access materials, students have to have an access code. So this, they have to purchase an access code. And the access, sometimes there are problems with the access codes. I'm not, for example, they get an access code for the wrong tech. That happens every once in a while. Tech support usually takes care of these kinds of issues pretty quickly, but it's still kind of annoying that it happens in the first place. And another thing I've noticed, and this might be particular to some of the McGraw-Hill stuff that I'm using, but a lot of it's based on Flash technology. You've been keeping track of how interactive websites are made. Flash was used for a long time, but recently Adobe, the makers of Flash, have decided they're not going to support Flash anymore. Web browsers are following suit. So this can be limited for access for some of these. Flash still works, but not as well as it did even just a few months ago. And another thing is that this is sort of the flip side of being feature rich, is a lot of these paid resources, they will take a student out of the Blackboard LMS that we use here into what looks like a completely different LMS that's maintained by the publisher. And so that can get confusing for students if there's a parallel gradebook or parallel way to lay out the assignments, parallel place for lectures, and it's all laid out differently in Blackboard. So that can create some issues. I tried to get around that, and I'll show you an example here in a second. Of course, the benefits of the free is they're free, right? They're just out there, and anybody can use them. And at least with the free resources that I've been using, that Michael Bach website that I showed you, he used to have everything in Flash. He hasn't been in Flash for 7 years. So he's like way ahead of the curve in terms of technology. And as I demonstrated there with the Michael Bach websites, the free resources often lead to free resources, which is nice. Of course, not all, in terms of cost, not all free resources are high quality. Some are, in fact, very, very, very poor. And then there's this whole no tech support issue. And this has been an issue for me from time to time, where certain, like a QuickTime plugin doesn't work or something like that in the browser. And now I'm tech support, which doesn't make my life easy. It doesn't happen often, but it's happened. And another drawback with a lot of the free resources is there's limited to no integration with the Blackboard gradebook. So I can link out to these demonstrations. I can link out to questions. I can link out to interactive demonstrations and stuff like that. But it's really hard to track what students are doing with them, or if they're doing anything. Yes, it's possible to set up parallel assignments and stuff like that in Blackboard, and I do that on occasion. But it's nice just having them go to the external start, and then the computers take care of everything, and I don't have to do anything special. Okay. So next I'll show you some examples of what I use. First, I'll show you for Psychology 200. We'll try to show you McGraw-Hill's Connect and some of the things that I use and how I have it set up in my Blackboard class. Okay, so this is my introductory psychology class. I have to thank Barry Burkett here for the banner there. We go into modules here. This is a current course. This is actually live, going on right now. Students are working on this, so I have to be careful not to show grades or anything like that. But what's that?
Or advanced dates in the middle of
advanced date? Oh yeah, well, yes, that's right. We won't go messing around. I just want to show you how I have things set up here. So, modules with learning objectives, I think that's pretty standard. Going to module 4, this is the new one. So I always have an introductory video that students can watch that I made myself, and sort of an outline here of what students have to do. And then in here, I have a folder called with Connect assignments. And these are all just different links to the different assignments. So the links that have the LS in front of them, these go to what are called Learn Smart quizzes. I'll show you those in a second. Those are actually graded. Students do these for grade. The other ones, these are just homework. They don't really count for a grade. But I'll go ahead and show you. I'll show you the critical thinking and metacognition one, just, well, because it's there. So when we click over here, notice one thing that's pretty nice is you get to see right away how many students, are students actually accessing this. And it makes it very easy. And if I wanted to dig and actually see which students are doing it and which ones aren't, I can do that pretty easily as well. I'm not going to do that now, but that's very possible. To preview the assignment and sort of see what students see. And this one is pretty simple. They're not all this simple. It's basically just a little video. Students watch it. It talks about critical thinking and metacognition, what these terms mean and stuff like that. I'm not going to have you watch the video, but the point is it's pretty simple. It's pretty basic, the video. But then below it, it's got some practice questions. It's right there. These don't actually count for a grade, but it's right there with the resource. And if students get something, I'm giving away answers here, but if students get something wrong, right, they can follow this link here and it takes them to an ebook where they can hopefully get clarification for anything they got wrong. And then another nice thing is we're out of Blackboard. This has this return to Blackboard, so I press that, go right to Blackboard, and anything that the student had done in the Connect system, all that data, when they click that link, is sent to Blackboard. And if their browser crashes or something like that, and they can't click the link, then it's pretty easy for me to go in and pull the data from Connect myself. I can do that. And I do that about once a week or so. So with these little homework assignments, I could probably find free resources that are basically equivalent or make my own. But what is really cool, I think, about this McGraw-Hill is these Learn Smart quizzes. And I'll click on go one of these so you can see what this does. Again, we can see students who have started and students who've submitted. They have until Thursday to do this, so don't worry too much. Go get a preview. So nothing happens here, and that's because after click, you see this is something that relies on Flash technology, and so this is a little bit annoying, but so it takes a little while to load, which again is a little bit annoying, but it takes me right to this quiz, right? And so it has a question, 3 stages of memory, and some model. So here, correct answer would be sensory memory. Of course, I'm sure you all know that. Well, and so I can put this in there. But before I submit the answer, I have to give a judgment about how confident I am. Do I know it? Am I a little unsure? Do I have no idea? Right, so this forces students to think of not only, not just give an answer, but it forces them to make a judgment of learning. How well do they know it? And one of the things we know about learning is learning is enhanced. Having to think about the learning process. So that's a really nice feature. And another nice thing, I'm not going to go through and show you at all, but let's say I'm going through this quiz and I'm getting the answers wrong over and over and over and over and over again, just clicking random stuff here. Oops, I'm wrong. If you do that enough, the quiz will tell you to stop the quiz and go read. It basically says, it looks like you're struggling. You need to go study a little more. And it'll take them right to the ebook, which is very nice. And down here at the bottom of the screen, you can see it's keeping track of how many items the students are, it starts with 60 items, so they have to get 60 questions correct. And the questions are drawn based on the learning objectives that I choose. So I choose what I want them to demonstrate knowledge about, and there's a pool of questions that it pulls from these questions until they have demonstrated that they understand these concepts. Yeah.
What do you do with the judgment selections? Are they tallied somewhere?
Yes, they are. They are. This is another cool thing. So if we go over here to reports, What the students can see now, well, they can see their current learning status. So you can see I'm way behind on all this stuff. This is my fake student account. But it can go in here, show, they can see how well they're doing on the different topics. They can go in here and see the questions that they got incorrect. And of course, one of the big things about studying is you need to know what you don't know. And that's something that's very hard for people to keep track of by themselves. Here, it does it for them. And then to answer Steve's question, you can go over here, and it is the percentage. And this is just me, so they can go in and see how well their judgments are calibrated with their answers. They can also, so if I go to the table of contents here, you see I've got some of this stuff is assigned, but students also have the option, I don't require this, but they could go here and they can make their own practice quizzes, right? So based on what the current learning status, the missed questions, the most challenging learning objectives, their self-assessments, they can go in here and they can build their own practice quizzes, and it can help them study. I don't require students to do this, but quite a few students stumble on it themselves and do it on their own. And typically the students who find this feature and do it say they like it, and they of course earn a much better grade in class than students who don't. So again, a lot of very cool features that are all designed to help students learn. And when I started requiring students to come into these Learn Smart quizzes, I saw a jump in grades on assessment quizzes, right? All this is for practice. It's not worth a lot of points, right? So each of these quizzes that they take, I think, 1 point or something like that. And then the assessment quiz is worth 20. So they're not worth much. It's just for practice to help them know what they know and what they don't know. And it's got some other features here that are just, I don't know what it's here for. This is called the tree of knowledge, and you can see mine is very small. But what happens is as they take quizzes, this tree grows. It becomes a bigger tree. And so this is more just sort of like a for fun kind of thing. So that is sort of an overview of the Connect system of the Learn Smart quizzes. What I really like is the metacognitive aspect of it and the reports that it generates for students. And based on what I've seen in my class and some of the other reports I've read about this system and some other ones, they really do help students learn and retain information. And it should be over the long term too, not just for the module for that week, but it should be the long term. Of course, I haven't done that study myself, but based on my understanding of the literature in this area, that should be enough. Okay, so we go back here now to Blackboard. And I would show you the gradebook here, but it has student names in it. But basically what you see is that all of this stuff is just automatically logged in there. Okay, so that's Psychology 200, paid resource, not free. Next, I'll go into a section of Psych 315, which is sensation and perception. And I will show you a couple of the resources I use in there and how I have things set up in there. So back to Blackboard here. Courses. Okay, so this is, again, I have to thank Barry Burkett for the banner there. That's actually an anaglyph. So if you put on the red, blue 3D glasses, everything pops out at you in 3 dimensions. Some students discover that on their own as they take the course. So this course is not currently running, but it will, offering something basically this in the spring. So if we go in here, again, modules, much like before, I'm gonna actually go into module 4. So again, I have intro videos. And in these intro videos, I talk about some of the free resources that are available on the web. And so what I do is I put links to that content below the video so that students, after they watch the video, if they want to go see it, they can. So again, this is back to Michael Bach's website. This is, if you stare here at the center, the little yellow dots might start disappearing. This is again a perceptual phenomenon called motion-induced blindness. But again, it's interactive, so students can play around to see how changing the speed or the size of the dots or things like that affects what they disappear. So of course they're not going to either. That's cool. And then this is a free resource that requires Flash. So again, point like walkers, and again, this one's interactive, so female, male. So this is just making the point that with very sparse information, we can get a lot of information. We can make a lot of inferences about people based on movement patterns and stuff like that. I love the Onion satire. So this is just sort of a joke. It's about distance perception, so I link to this. And then down here is where I've got links to other assignments. And these are all free, and they're all, in this case, they're all linked with the textbook. If I click here on just motion after effects, students can read over this, what a motion after effect is, and then there's a little thing where it can play around if you guys want to experience it. Just, and if you stare here for about 10 seconds, it stops, you might experience an illusory motion in the opposite direction. Clicking on these links, you can get explanation for why it occurs. Some suggested activities, some suggested variations of the experiment that students can try that illustrate various things about MAE, motion after effect, and how it works. And there are these optional activity quizzes. I actually don't assign these, and the reason is they don't play well with Blackboard. And it would be pretty hard for me to integrate that stuff. So for every chapter, I've got several of these, but I also have links down here to practice quizzes. Now these are free practice quizzes, so they're not as feature-rich, they're not quite as cool as the Connect, but they're pretty, I mean, for what they are, they're pretty good. So I, put these in the syllabus. The students need to take these, but I have a hard time tracking how they actually do it, other than they clicked on the link in Blackboard. So you can change the mode here. So now you get. Oh, that's a great question to come up, isn't it? Yeah. So there's not that much math in this course. There's a little bit, but again, so students can take these practice questions, and they don't have, it doesn't force them to do the judgment of learning, but it does give them immediate feedback, right? And immediate feedback is something, again, that's been shown to be important. And it doesn't link to the textbook in quite a direct way as some of the other stuff in Connect, but it still does link to the textbook in some way. So while it doesn't have all of the bells and whistles, all the features that make the Learn Smart quizzes so appealing to me, it's got enough that I don't feel the need. And plus, these are upper level students as well. These aren't first year students. But I don't feel the need to look for something to pay for when this is pretty good. Okay. So, does anybody have any questions or?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, well now we'll go to the fun part, but it is sort of some of the mistakes that I've made in the past. And that you know, I've been doing online courses for a while, and I've been using free and publisher provided resources the entire time, of course. And one of the things I did in the first couple of times I taught online was using publisher provided resources that did not get a direct hyperlink in Blackboard. So all the examples that I showed you here, right? There's a link in the course that goes directly to the resource that I want students to access. What I had done the first time I tried this is I put one course link over here on the side of the course that went to the resource, and then gave students instructions in a Word document on how to navigate the different places. And that didn't work very well. Turned out with this particular resource, I wasn't being lazy, because with this particular resource I was using, I couldn't link directly to the activities. Students had to navigate to it. So that proved to be problematic. We stopped using that pretty soon. And another thing is that at first I didn't produce any of my own content. Right, publisher provided resources are great. Free resources on the internet are great, but a lot of these students, they want to know that there's a real person who's knowledgeable teaching this stuff. So, you know, it's very time consuming to produce your own resources, but it kind of has to be done. So I've started now in all the courses you saw in the Blackboard shells, I had little introductory videos. These range in length from 3 minutes to 15 minutes, depending on the topic. But I put them there just so students know that I'm a real person, I'm knowledgeable, I'm capable of, you know, putting together original content that's related to the material at hand. Sometimes I require students to watch the stuff I produce, sometimes it's optional, but I put it there just, well, for all the reasons that I've gone over, so students know I'm not just some random person who doesn't know anything. And another mistake that I made, and I did this only once, was focusing way too much on the external resources. And I think this is an important point. It's very easy to get caught up in finding the perfect resource, right? The perfect system for doing practice quizzes and all. And I don't think it exists. Every single system I've seen has flaws. And I've never had a system that generated 0 complaints from students. Now some generate more complaints than others, but what's important is how I deal with those complaints. Like when students are frustrated about something, when something's confusing to a student, how do you deal with that with the student? You just kick them to IT? Do you just ignore it? Do you kick them to a teaching assistant or a grader or something like that? Or what do you do? And so knowing that I have all the resources I have are flawed in some way, what I've started thinking about is not how can I find better resources, but how can I guide students? How can I help them deal with the flaws in a way that's not, in a way that they can appreciate? And so that means spending a lot of time in email with students and spending a lot of time in the discussion board in Blackboard. And I think, I mean, I told you about that awful, you know, resources I used at first that didn't have direct hyperlinks. I mean, that was very problematic, but at the end of the day, students were overall happy with the course because I spent a lot of time on email going back with screenshots and this and that or the other, helping students get through it. And it was one of the things, once they learned it, once they got it, they could deal with it. But it was getting them there took a lot of time. And so finally, I think I've got one other thing that I want to focus on here is that I was just talking about, you know, the importance of interactions with the students, right? So all of these online resources, all these published, provided, free, whatever, they're there to help us, but they should almost like blend into the background, right? Because it's not the point of the class, right? It's students learning is the point. And I've started taking very seriously, well, started as in 6 or 7 years ago, thinking really hard about the feedback that I give to students. You know, especially with online classes where there are lots and lots and lots of students and lots of automated quizzes, lots of auto-grader stuff, it can sort of feel kind of impersonal. And I've taken a few online classes myself, and I never liked that. I hated the impersonal feeling of it. So I really focus on providing personal feedback to students that can help them. Now, when I have a class with anything over 30, really, it's very hard to keep up with the grading myself. But I always sit down with my course facilitators and course graders, and I go over how to construct useful feedback for students. And this is especially important for writing assignments. There are auto graders for writing assignments. I never use them because I think that it's the feedback from the auto graders, I think, again, seems sort of impersonal, it seems like it was generated by a robot, because it was. And so we want the students to improve as writers, and so to do that, you have to critique their writing. And there's a wrong way to do that. I know this. The first time I taught sensation and perception, I wasn't careful with the feedback I gave to students, and they got mad. I didn't change anything about the course except my approach to providing feedback. And now it's a perfectly fine course. Students take it, students ask about, you know, what they have to do to get in the course and so on and so forth. The basic approach that I take is no matter how awful a paper is, no matter how awful a quiz is, you always very concretely tell students what they can do to improve, right? And make clear connection with whatever rubric you're using, make a clear connection with the assignment that they've actually turned in, refer to specific things in the assignment so they know that there's a person who actually looked over it, who actually thought about it, and is giving thoughtful, clear, and helpful advice on how to improve. And you know, for the classes I have now, there are so many students I cannot possibly, I think I've got over 50 students in one section of intro right now. I can't grade all those papers in a weekend, so I have to divvy it up, but my facilitators have no problem following the simple guidelines. Start off by saying something that's not a criticism. Give all the criticisms you want, and then clear instruction on how to improve, how to do better next time. Yeah. And I pretty regularly get emails from students thanking me for the feedback, even when I didn't provide it, even when it was one of my facilitators that provides the feedback. And so I think that I couldn't teach online courses without these additional resources, but the resources are never going to make the course a good course. They can make the course a bad course, but you need to have, I think in my experience, you need to have something more than just the resources. Okay, so that's what I have. Any questions?
There's some question from Sarah. Following up on the idea of open source books. Do you think it's a good idea to change to open books instead of using more expensive alternatives? What are the pros and cons? And what about the upper level courses?
So the question is the pros and cons of using open source books. Well, I mean, the pros, they're free, obviously. The con is that they're not always great in terms of quality. Some are better than others, but it's the review process. I wonder about the review process for a lot of these open source books that I've seen. So with traditional publishers, there's a peer review process where, the authors submit the work and then people like me review it before it gets published. For open source stuff, that doesn't always seem to be the case. Now, some open source books, like the Nova project in particular, that one is reviewed. But it's not exactly free in the sense that if you want to use all of the features that come with the textbook, students still have to pay something. And what they pay for is basically adaptive quizzing services similar to Connect, but that don't work quite as well, at least so far, at least from what I've seen. Now, I love the idea of an open source textbook in general. But what I've seen, and I haven't spent a whole lot of time looking at maybe 3 or 4 different open source textbooks. It's been a while since I looked at them, but they were all missing something. And publishers now too are becoming more and more sensitive, especially for large courses like introductory psychology. They are becoming sensitive to price concerns. So McGraw-Hill, for us, they came down to $60 for the intro psych textbook. And that includes the access code for Connect. Other publishers were coming out of some prices, $120, $150 and stuff like that. So publishers, some publishers anyway, are really sensitive to the price concerns. So yeah, I like the idea of open source. I just have not seen anything that replaces a traditional textbook.
The second part of the question was, what about the upper level courses? Do you feel the same for upper level courses, or?
For the upper level courses, it depends on the course. For a course like Psych 315, Sensation Perception, yeah, a textbook, I need a textbook. And that's because although the course is more specialized than intro, my area is vision science, so I could put together a course on vision without a textbook. I couldn't do that for other things, just because my depth of knowledge just isn't there. So that's one of the things that textbooks really help with is somebody who's an expert has gone and compiled these materials and put them together. And my role with Sensation and Perception anyway, I've not seen a free upper level course or textbook on that material. I don't really teach anything else at upper level outside of sort of cognition and perception. But in general, what I've noticed is that the more specialized the textbooks get, more expensive they get. Again, it would be nice if there was a free resource. Actually, there are tons of free resources for specialized content, for upper level content. It's just not always organized as a textbook. I'll say for a seminar course, if I'm doing a seminar course, I never have a textbook, right? But then we're sort of getting even more specialized than a survey course. So for seminar style stuff, it would all be sort of reading journal articles and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you. I also have a note from Kelly Smith. She says the library tries to help curate quality open access materials. She's building a library guide of good open educational resources. If anybody wants to suggest resource to her, please let her know. Her email is kelly.smith2@edu. And she has a link to libguides.edu, and it's like a library curated content. So
that would be good to see. Yeah.
Thank you, Kelly. Any more questions? Thank you.
Good work, Alex. Thank you.